to go. All right, you're good to go.
All right. So thank you everyone for attending my presentation about travel. Um, Today we're going to be talking about why, even with the pandemic, if you want to get out and you want to travel, now's the time to do it. I'm going to give you just my basic 3 success strategies for traveling in a more accessible fashion. A little bit about me. My name is Sarah Marshall. I am the owner of Travel Able. We are a full service travel agency that focuses solely on custom adventure planning for and creating custom accessible adventures for families and individuals. And the question I always get is, well, what is accessible? Like, what do you mean by accessible? And the definition for us of accessibility is making sure that you can access your environment. So I can't remember who was mentioning that everyone's diagnosis, even if they have the same diagnosis, their symptoms might be different. So I don't know what you need, and you will tell me what you need, and I will create something that allows you to access that environment based on what you need and not what someone else needs. And unfortunately, that's the biggest problem I see in the travel industry, is that they think accessibility is like a one button that you push and you get what you need. And that's not true. And so what I'm trying to do in my company is not only find the resources that you specifically need to access, your environment when you're traveling, but also to push the travel industry, especially like the hotels, the airlines, the restaurants and things like that, to be more inclusive and have more options for accessibility at the ready. All right, if you can go to the next slide, please. So a little bit about me, just real quick. I started this company in 2018, so we're a little bit new. But I started it because my son has a number of medical challenges, and we've lived and traveled all over the world. So he was born in Israel. We lived there for about 6 months while he was in the hospital. We have lived in London. We've lived in Jordan. We lived in Amman, Jordan for 2 years. We are moving to Thailand in September. So that's our next adventure. And it's never been super easy, but it's always been rewarding. So for him, we've seen transformations in his development, his breathing ability, just a general reduction of stress when he's been able to travel. And so we started our company to be able to provide support, a helping hand to anyone who wants to travel and needs a little bit of advice, someone to plan it all, someone to advocate on your behalf. And that is what we do. So when I go about planning a trip for my clients, I go through these strategies also. And the first strategy we always go through is we look at the destination as important as the actual way to get there. So, airlines are hard, and I really can't control the airlines, unfortunately. I wish I could. And that is probably the worst part of any accessible trip, is getting there. However, if you get there and it's not accessible, then maybe you're there a week and you can't do anything, or you're there a week and you feel uncomfortable. And so we really make sure that the destination where you're going will meet your needs before we even start thinking about how to get there. So if you go to the next slide. Right now, I am not going, one of the questions I always get is, where can I go right now? Right now, I am not going to tout international travel, although you can go international if you want, simply because the rules keep changing. So for instance, the Caribbean was open, but as of about 2 weeks ago, a bunch of islands, Antigua, St. Lucia, now Costa Rica, in Central America, they've all shut back down. And this might happen for a while. So I want to highlight US destinations and road trips, especially, as things that you can do right now, this minute, with a little bit of planning. So this is just a survey of where people are wanting to go as of April 11th of this year. As you can see, a lot of people are wanting to go to Florida. Obviously, the weather is nice there, coming out of a long winter. You definitely want to get some sun and some vitamin D. So Florida is the top destination. I would, however, say that Florida is where a lot of people are going, and they've had trouble with overcrowding. So if you are, I'm going to say COVID averse, like you don't want to be in a group of people, even if you are vaccinated, Florida might not be the place for you. However, there are some lovely, very accessible beach rentals down in Gulf Shores, Alabama, Orange Beach, Alabama, which is sort of adjacent to the Florida Panhandle and can give you that sunshine and that beach experience without the crowds of the top destinations in Florida. New York obviously it closes and opens and closes and opens. Las Vegas has been open for a while. There are many great deals in Las Vegas right now. If you're interested in a short stay or a quick trip, Las Vegas is where you want to be. I'm planning a trip to Hawaii for a client in September. California is sort of reopening, and Texas has been open for a while if you like that kind of idea. And then, you know, you can go down the list. My state of Arizona is on there, Miami, New Orleans. I would highlight Seattle. While it's on the bottom of the list and can be quite rainy, it is very accessible. Another destination, if you're an adventure seeker and you want to participate in some adaptive sports, they have the Adaptive Sports Center is in Salt Lake City. And Salt Lake City is a very accessible destination as well. So there's many places that you might not even think of that you could go right now and have a really fantastic trip. Okay, next screen. Oh, so I've put it up. Salt Lake City. Oh, Gatlinburg, Tennessee. I've planned a number of trips there. That's Dollywood area, Smoky Mountains, a number of accessible cabins if you're into that, or wonderfully accessible hotels there. San Diego is a shining star if you'd like to go there. Washington, D.C., very quiet right now because everybody's working from home. And St. Augustine in Florida, if you're interested in Florida, that's a wonderfully historic town, and also very accessible as well. And then Seattle, as I said. Okay, keep going. And then our second strategy is know who to ask for help. Obviously, you're here because I'm a travel professional, and so you might be asking me for help. But if you like to plan travel on your own, there are tons of resources out there for you to be able to ask for a little additional assistance. So if you go to the next slide. So the first, and you'll get these slides, I believe, if Mary can correct me if I'm wrong, but you'll want to print this out and magnet it to your refrigerator or staple it to your wall. If you are traveling, this is your first line of defense. TSA Cares is a program of TSA. They will basically escort you through security so that you do not need to get out of your chair. You do not need to remove any clothing or have anything scanned. They simply just walk you through. They will also provide boarding assistance. If you need assistance in the airport, for instance, some airports lock their accessible restrooms. So if you need access to those, this would all be done through TSA Cares. You want to set that up 72 hours prior to travel by either calling that phone number or emailing that email. They are very responsive. And if you do have a problem, their management is really good about taking feedback and ensuring that it is taken care of. I know you all are in Wisconsin, but if you happen to fly out of O'Hare or Midway in the Chicagoland area, they piloted this program. So they are top notch when it comes to understanding how to provide the best level of assistance. In fact, I booked a client through TSA Cares and she decided she didn't need their help. And so she went on through and they called me and they're like, when's she coming? I said, I think she's already at her gate. Sorry. But yeah, I mean, so they were waiting for her and they knew they wanted to provide the best level of assistance. So your first line of defense, especially with the airlines, is this TSA Cares number. Okay, next slide. The other thing is if you are, as I said, the airlines are probably the worst offenders when it comes to not being very accessible. But there are special codes that can be put on your reservation in advance. You do have to call direct. Most of the airlines do have a special services department. You want to be sent to that number. and you want to tell them everything, especially your wheelchair. So if you are traveling and either stowing your wheelchair or checking your wheelchair, you want to ensure that they know all the specifications. That includes the length, the height, the weight, the length with you in it, the height with you in it, the weight with you in it. They want to know if it's a wet cell or a dry cell battery. There's all these questions. And I have a form I can provide to you that you can fill out in advance so that you know exactly what information you need to collect. But they'll need to know that before you get on the airplane. It helps them also to service that. So for instance, if you just happen to have a folding wheelchair, sometimes depending on the dimensions, they will actually put it inside the stewardess closet for you. Nobody knows to ask that though, because they just assume they have to check it. So always, you can certainly check with me, but always check with the airline too, and tell them the dimensions of it folded, so that they might be able to say, okay, when you get there, ask the stewardess, they'll put it in their closet, which keeps it from getting damaged. So just something to think about. Another thing is, if you don't have a caregiver that you want to travel with, there's a possibility of hiring caregivers to travel with you. Thinking that's something you can think about. You can talk to the airlines about it. Sometimes they will give you companion fares or nurse fares, which are reduced so that you can travel together. And then obviously TSA Cares again. You can always ask the hotel concierge to assist you with anything, whether that's arranging an accessible tour, an accessible taxi, Uber, whether that's contacting a local pharmacy for medication refills, or a hospital in case of an emergency. Especially, and that's more for overseas than locally, but it still applies. Those people are there to help. They might not be friendly, but they're supposed to be there to help. And then welcome centers for the destination, especially if you're driving and you happen to see, like, I'm just going to use Myrtle Beach as an example. The Myrtle Beach Visitor Center, when you get to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, actually has passes that you can get that you sort of flash whenever you're going someplace, and they'll give you discounts. They'll also arrange for you to be in certain sections of restaurants or certain sections of an attraction that are more accessible than others. So, always stop by the Welcome Center, introduce yourself, tell them what you need, what you're looking for, what kind of experiences you want to have, and let them find those people for you. Now, again, I can do all that for you as well as a travel agent, but if you have a travel already planned or a trip already planned, or you're thinking about it and you want to use these tips, these are great tips to use. It's exactly what I do when I'm planning for clients. All right, I wanted to just provide these codes. These are the codes that you would put on your reservation. So what you would do is you would call up the airline and you would say, I need these following things. For instance, DPNA code, which is about 3 down. That's the one we use for my son who has autism, or if you're traveling with a grandchild, maybe that has Down syndrome. If you're traveling with an animal, like a service dog, there are service dog, the S van down at the bottom, or the ESAN up at the top. If you're bringing oxygen, that is something that's that you would need a code for. If you're bringing a concentrator, or sometimes they will provide tanks if you need oxygen. If you need a meet and assist, if you need a hospital, like a stretcher to assist you off the airplane, you need all that kind of things. This can easily be done by just calling up the airline and saying, I need these codes put on my reservation. The minute those codes are put on that reservation, the airline kicks into gear to getting everything ready for you. So there's those. If you go to the next slide, there's ones related to wheelchair use. Go to the next one. So this is all the various versions of wheelchair assistance that they have. So for instance, as you see, if you tell them you have a dry cell or a wet cell battery, they will put those codes in for you. If you need the onboard aisle wheelchair required, you'll need to put that on. There's 3 levels of how mobile are you? So you could put those on. All those codes, you could just call them up, tell them what you need, and they will put those codes on for you. All right, and then strategy number 3 is always have a plan. You never want to just say, oh, I'm going to go to the beach and just go, because it's not going to be what you expect. And you may not have as great a time as if you had a plan in place. And so we talk a lot about figuring out the destination, right? And then you've called for all of your assistance. We set up and make sure that any equipment that you need to rent is already in your hotel room. There are companies that can rent everything from hospital beds to cough assist vests, ventilators, CPAP machines. So if yours is either broken in transit or you don't want to bring it, but you need it when you get there, we can have those delivered directly to your room. I know that in some cases people have said they could sleep better in like a recliner. So there are companies that will deliver extra furniture to your room. And there are hotels that work better with those companies than others. We plan for caregivers to assist if needed. We can plan for private tours. We can plan for public tours. We can plan for beach wheelchairs. You want to plan all that in advance and make sure that you have it all well documented. This is where I would say, use a travel agent. But really, like, you don't have to use me as the agent. You can just email me. I know Kathy and Linda, they used to email me all the time and say, hey, we're thinking about this. What do you think? What are some ideas? I love to chat, so we can always chat about your requirements. And if I have any resources for you, I can certainly pass those on. I've planned a lot of accessible trips sort of all over the world. So anything that you're interested in doing, you just let me know and we can make it happen. And then if you go to the next slide, I think it's just my contact information. Yes. So as I said, this is a very brief overview. Travel is kind of crazy right now. So I didn't really want to talk about like where to go right now because it's up in the air, but anywhere you want to go, we can certainly start to plan. I don't know when cruising will come back. I know that that's a big fan of some, and people are a big fan of cruising. I just don't know when that will come back. I do know that when it does come back, you will likely have to be vaccinated. I do know that when you leave the country and come back, the United States is requiring you to have a negative COVID test 3 days before. That requirement is not being waived if you are vaccinated. So we always arrange for you to get your test. We'll make sure that you have that on your itinerary before you leave the destination. Similarly with Hawaii, even though it's a US state, and so the US testing rules don't apply. Hawaii has testing rules where you have to get a certain test to get there, and then you have to have a test every time you switch islands. I do believe they are waiving that requirement as of May 11th, which I think was yesterday, 2 days ago. They're waiving that requirement if you are vaccinated, but you have to upload your proof of vaccination to an app and then you have to show the app everywhere you go in Hawaii. So there are some regulations if you're thinking about moving different or going to different places. Yeah, so that's all I wanted. I wanted to open it up for questions, stories, comments.
I'll start.